Hi again, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics, where, as I like to say, we do just what the name of the show says. We go inside one of the athletic programs here at Furman University. This week, we're talking men's tennis with JJ Whitlinger, who is in his fourth year as the head coach, his eighth year with the program, and going to tell us everything that's going on with his guys. How you doing?
Doing well. You know, season is about a third of the way or so, and had some ups, had some downs. Pretty standard amongst intercollegiate athletics. So just plugging away.
And I guess it would not be an athletic season of any kind if there was not some adversity that struck. And adversity comes in all shapes and sizes. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. We're going to talk about kind of nursing some younger players through in the face of that adversity and what the ultimate goal is once SoCon tournament rolls around. But before we get into any of that, how are things going inside the program overall now here in your fourth season? Have you got things kind of flowing the way you want it to flow?
Yeah. I mean, you always want to see the fruits of your labor yield a few more W's. You know, regardless of how many wins or losses you have, you always kind of want more.
But that's the one kind of greed that's okay.
Yeah, that's right. But I think the real special part about this team is I haven't seen a team put in as much work outside of team practice that this team has. They're, as you kind of alluded to, they're really young, freshmen and sophomores mostly in the starting lineup, and they're really kind of chomping at the bit to learn and get better. And whether they're working with Sasha or myself outside of practice time, or hitting with each other, or just getting extra baskets of serves, I mean the belief in the process is there, and more so than I think in past years. So that's really exciting, and it yields good things for the future.
And as a coach, when you can see that belief is taking hold, then it has to be encouraging that even through some of the adversity we're going to talk about here in just a minute, if they're still believing, that's got to be a good sign for the direction of the program.
I think so. I think, you know, tennis, played it my whole life, coached it my whole life. It's kind of in the blood. It's a very confidence-based sport, right? So it's tough. You know, losing, because winning and losing can become habitual in tennis, and but seeing the guys come out, win or lose, and put that work in is just something that it makes me, you know, proud as a coach. It means we're instilling the right things in them to improve and get better.
And tennis and golf have one thing in common, is that it is simultaneously an individual and a team sport at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
And getting, in this instance, your guys to be able to balance that, how much of a challenge is that?
So the biggest challenge is, as a coach, you know, you're simultaneously watching 3 to 4 matches at once.
Good luck with that, right?
Yeah. My wife always asks why I'm so tired after a dual match. It's because the emotional energy that's spent playing kind of 4 matches mentally with guys is it's grueling. And so, you know, for us, it's really what we're looking for individually is that all the guys bring energy to each match, right? Whether they're winning or losing, you know, they're there to lift themselves up and their teammates up,
right?
Whether they're playing or not playing. And you know, as a young team, the real tough part is the consistency day to day. You know, the consistency day to day for how they're bringing that energy or how they're executing their patterns on court. And so that's kind of the tough bit as a coach, is riding that wave with a young team.
Well, you're having to do it, and you're going to have to do it anyway, because it was predominantly a young team, but you got even younger in your first match of this spring after the new year started. Just take us through what happened to Emil.
Yeah, well, we're playing Georgia Tech in our first match. Was it January 14th or 15th or something like that? And he's the one upperclassman in my singles lineup, and he was playing amazing tennis. He was beating the number 2-3 player from Georgia Tech, playing great, kind of just hitting him off the court with his forehand, which he tends to do when he's playing well. And then he got a boo-boo. He he ran backwards for a ball that went over his head, tripped, and landed on his wrist. And he's been out ever since. We're hoping to get him back. He's a phenomenal. He's a captain. He's a phenomenal leader, phenomenal player, and a great guy to have around. It's been the silver lining is it's been fun. He's been kind of the third coach since then. When we're playing our matches, he's been on helping the guys, and they really respect his opinion and his voice. So tough for the team to lose a player like that, but it's kind of fun to watch him in this other role as well.
And talking about Emil Wessling, the junior from Sweden, and I guess the hope is obviously there's going to be the physical aspect of recovery coming back, but while he's doing these other things, maybe he sees some things about the game from this perspective that he does not see in the trenches as a player, and how will that help him when he returns to action?
It's a great point of view. I've been watching him enjoy the coaching aspect, and the great thing is his wrist that he broke was his left wrist. So he's been training, like, I think 2 days after it broke, he was out on the court. That's just who Emil is. He's a machine. He wants to be on court. He wants to get better. So, he's been able to hit forehands and work on his slice. So he's physically been working on things that he needs to work on to help his tennis get better. But to your point, I think being outside of a tennis match and being able to take that kind of 10,000-foot view and watch and analyze is only gonna help his knowledge of tennis and integrate into his own tennis when he gets back.
And I'm sure it doesn't hurt you to have you'd rather have him on the court, but it helps to have a third person, right?
Yes, it does. We're not fortunate enough to have like a grad assistant or a volunteer assistant right now, which can be great, but I do think having a teammate whose voice is really well received on court is highly beneficial as well.
So he's out,
Yeah.
and that means, and you were telling me before we started this, that you're playing freshmen at your 1 and 2, and sophomores everywhere else in the singles, right?
Yes.
Good luck with that, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me about these guys.
Yeah. Look, they all excelled in the junior ranks, and that's why they're here. And just down the board, whether it's Jerry Barton at 1 or Thomas Kennedy at 2, Elijah Paritsky at 3. They're all just kind of learning, as we talked about before we went on air, just really learning on the job, a bit of baptism by fire, especially with the type of schedule we have this year. It's something that, as a coach, you're hoping these experiences help them in the future, because having a young team that competes the way we have so far, the future is pretty bright. So I'm excited about it.
JJ Whitlinger with us as we talk men's tennis on this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. You obviously have a fall season in collegiate tennis, but the spring, quote unquote, started at that Georgia Tech match on January the 14th. But let's go back to the fall. You've got so many young guys. How does that ability to play matches in the fall help prepare them for when things really get rolling after the first of the year?
Yeah. It just integrates them into kind of obviously college tennis and kind of what it's all about. It's completely different from what they're used to. Some of them play these team events as juniors, whether it's they play these things called zonals and where they're competing as a team with maybe their state or their zone. But it's kind of apples and oranges when you get to the kind of the energy of a college tennis match, especially at the highest level. And it gives us just an opportunity to kind of get their feet wet in the fall and kind of see what we're working with, and allows us to really dig deep into their game, watch them play, and work on a few things. And the fall's really important for us because it's an evaluation. Mostly fall is getting them reps and evaluating kind of where they're standing in your lineup.
And then the other thing that every young athlete on Furman's campus has to adapt to is the academic load, academic standard here. And it's funny, JJ, I talked to freshmen in various sports from time to time here, and I asked him, I said, I know what you were told about academics here at Furman. I said, but did you really grasp what it was going to be like when you got here? And they all say no, they didn't. So that's something else that these young men have to learn to deal with.
Yeah, it's we talk about our guys when they first come in as freshmen is everyone kind of has a personal pie chart that they work with and how they divide their time up, and generally they're going to have to adjust that when they get to Furman. They're going to have to skew a little bit more on the academic side, a little bit more on the tennis side, a little less on the personal side, and kind of find their way. Fortunately, Furman does a great job of having people assist with the academics, and Christine Alsip, who works with our guys, she keeps them on top of all their stuff. And, we've been fortunate in the last couple of years. Our team GPA, the way our guys excel in the classroom is exceptional. They take a lot of pride in it, and that's important to me and important to Sasha.
When that comes down as a head coach, you have to recruit the right type of player for your program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, and during the recruiting process, the one thing that I always talk to recruits about is we're looking for guys that take pride and put 100% in every part of their life, not just their tennis. Because if it's just their tennis, this really isn't the right place for them. They're gonna have to grind in the classroom, on the court, in the weight room, right? And fortunately, we find those guys. Sometimes they're harder to find than others, but when you find them, they're worth it. That's what I always say.
And tennis, like golf to a certain degree, has an international flavor to it when it comes to recruiting, and you have dipped into that international pool.
Yeah. Obviously Emil, captain from Sweden. I don't know if we have another. Elijah's he's been in Spain for like the last 5 years, so he's kind of international. We've been more international in the past. We're trending more American right now, but a lot of people ask me, do I recruit more international? I don't. Me and Sasha don't leave any stone unturned. Mm-hmm. We're looking for Furman kids. To your point, what you were saying before, we're looking for kids that value what we bring as a university, as a program. It doesn't matter whether they're from Asia, Europe, America. If they fit the profile, we're going to recruit them hard.
We talked about the fact that you're in your fourth year as the head coach. You've been with this program for 8 seasons now. You obviously played tennis. You made mention a moment ago that tennis is your life, and yet you're not that old, quote unquote. but how has the game changed from when you were playing to where it is now? Because we see so many changes in every sport, in technology, in nutrition, in training, and all of these things. Has there been a tremendous amount of change in the sport in a short window of time?
I mean, yes and no. It's a lot more physical than maybe even when I played, which was 20 years ago. Really, at a high level, I play, but not at a medium level now. It's just a lot more physical. The strings, the technology of the rackets, the type of revs you can get on the ball. It makes it so that guys have to put a lot more work with their conditioning, their fitness. I mean, when my dad played on the tour, they didn't hit a weight room. They didn't go to the weight room. They didn't do anything. All my dad used to do was just run stadium stairs for fitness. And so that's changed a lot. Nutrition, to your point, that's huge as well. And just what you put in your body, just the scientific part of, we have a guy on our team who has a tendency to cramp. And so we're always trying to push the right buttons in match on how can we keep him from doing that, and that's a big part of it, because as you play longer and longer matches, it's really who can last. A war of attrition is endurance, as you would say, endurance, attrition, and so it's kind of all inclusive now. Anything you can think of that's going to give you an edge, you're going to try to do it. Sports psychology, huge. It was when I was playing. It was like go figure it out. You know, you don't need help. Just go figure it out. But you know, getting help from a sports psychologist or a therapist or anything is huge these days.
Yeah, I don't say this making light of anything, but there was a time in the past where sports psychologists, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
but that has become the mental aspect of all sports has become such a big part of that puzzle now.
Yeah. Well, it's as tennis players, again, it's such a confidence sport that you know, you want your guys feeling their best at all times. You want them feeling confident in themselves, what they're doing on court, maybe even personally off the court. Like it's like if you feel good, you're going to play good, and so that's kind of the ultimate goal is you're trying to just get your guys in that sweet spot consistently.
And yet, with all of the changes in technology and the rackets and everything else, and all these things we're talking about with nutrition and conditioning and sports psychology, I always go back to something that Bob Ritchie says with all the analytics they use in basketball, and they're doing all these other things with nutrition and all of that. At the end of the day, he says it's a make or miss game. You make or miss. And so at the end of the day, does it come down to guys who make shots versus guys who don't make shots?
Yeah, when you boil it all down, that is how the game is played.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the guy that makes one more shot is generally gonna win. But it's a little deeper than that. I mean, in my opinion, it's who's going to impose their game style the best, who's going to have confidence in what they're doing on the court that day and execute their plan. And if they do that, they're gonna win. Yeah. So Bob's not far off for sure, as he generally isn't.
We're talking men's tennis with JJ Whitlinger as we continue on this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. Let's talk a little bit about this non-conference schedule of yours because we referenced it. So far, you've been at Georgia Tech, at Clemson, at Tulane, at South Alabama, at Georgia State. You have still coming up at Baylor, at Texas San Antonio, at UT Arlington, and then you get into conference play on March the 19th, beginning with UNCG. But is that challenging of a schedule? Is that by design? Is that what you like to do to challenge your guys?
Yeah, it is by design. We want to play teams outside of conference that are generally going to be about the level of the highest teams we play in conference. You know, because we want our guys to kind of understand that level of tennis and try to work on rising to that level. And so, you know, you take a few more L's, you know, on a yearly basis, but it's really all about winning the SoCon tournament. That's what it's all about for us. That's always the first goal that we talk about as a team. So it's just preparation until April 15th, really.
SoCon in tennis, like it is in basketball, is it a one-bid league?
It's a one.
The champion goes on to the NCAAs.
Yeah, the champion will go on to get in that large bid, very similar to basketball. You have to be top 40, top 45. So the goal is to be a perennial top 50 program where, you know, if you play a schedule like we're playing and you're winning a majority of those matches, you're going to be in that range. You're going to be in that 50 range. So it's kind of building year in, year out to a place where you might be putting yourself in contention for that. But it's a process.
So let's circle back then to these young players, 2 freshmen, three sophomores, 4 sophomores in at your singles match, taking their lumps early on. You know, just looking at losing 6-1 to Georgia Tech, 7-0 to Clemson, 6-1 to Tulane. How do you balance learning lessons versus not losing confidence?
Well, it's all about, you know, sometimes scorelines in tennis don't tell the whole story. Right? Because you lose a match 7-0 or 6-1, but when you look at the individual scores, you're like right there.
Right.
You know? And that's where the seasoning and the experience comes into play. you put us in those situations 2 years from now, it's a 4-3 match, maybe one way or the other. And so you're always trying, as a coach, you're trying to find things to latch onto of like, hey, what did we do really well today? Obviously, there's going to be times where you have to rip into the team because it didn't meet your expectations.
Right.
But for the most part, I'm always optimistic and looking at the bright side of what we did well and what we can build on.
Right.
And that's really the message. It's, hey guys, like, this was good today. We need to do more of this. If we keep doing this and building on it, we're going to be fine by the end of the season.
Because you have such an incredibly young team, I don't know that expectations ever change, but do you have to adjust your patience level as a head coach?
Yeah. So that was about as well said as you could put it. Yeah. It's tough because I haven't been in a situation in coaching college tennis for 15, 16, 17 years between the two schools I've been at. I haven't had a situation where you're playing with the type of team age-wise as we are. So you do have to adjust. You have to adjust mentally, but again, as you said, it's like, what I expect is always going to be high.
Right.
That you're bringing in players that you expect to be great. You expect them to work their butts off and be the best version of themselves. And so, but it's kind of a waiting game a little bit, right? It's like, when is it going to pop? And we've had great strides from our guys, but there's still a lot of meat on the bone. Mm-hmm. And so it's working through that. Yeah.
So what are you learning about yourself as a head coach during this process? That's a loaded question, I know, but
that I'm not as patient as I thought I was. No, I think it's good. So it's just a humbling thing, right? It's a humbling thing knowing that you're going to take some lumps, and you have to be okay with it, and really look, at the future, and understand that the future can be 2 weeks from now, right? It can be 2 weeks from now that everything kind of clicks as a team. It could be 2 years. I'm really, really excited about the near future and the distant future of this team, but it is tougher. Yeah, it is tougher. It's something that I haven't really dealt with in the past, and so anytime you're struggling as a team, you're kind of introspectively looking at yourself like, hey, what can I do?
Right.
What can I do better? How can I better serve, my players? But just harping on it again. I mean, this team works. They grind, and they're constantly putting in extra hours at the court, and that's all you can ask. It really is. It's all you can ask is that guys don't get discouraged. Guys still believe in what they're doing and what you're doing, and as long as that's happening, I can live with it.
So what role does Sasha play in keeping you grounded in the midst of all this?
He does a good job of keeping me on the straight and narrow. He spends a lot of time in my office. We just talk about everything, recruiting, team, practice stuff. What can we do differently? I mean, a lot of the time we have, we make adjustments off of what we saw in matches the weekend prior, and it's like, hey, we're gonna do this. So we're constantly workshopping, and he's a big part of what we do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a big part.
Talking with JJ Whitlinger, doing our best to get you into the men's tennis program here at Furman. And as we head down the stretch, your next home match, we're recording this on Tuesday morning, mm-hmm. Next home match is tomorrow against Gardner-Webb. And mm-hmm. then just to kind of look ahead at the rest of the schedule leading into conference play, we talked about going to Baylor, Texas, San Antonio, UT Arlington, so you've got a little Texas swing coming up there, mm-hmm. and then back home for Converse and Richmond on March the 18th, and then March 19th, it's Southern Conference. Who's the big dog in the conference this year?
Oh, it's ETSU is always the mountaintop, right? And you're trying to climb there and knock them off. So we'll see how we do. I think we stack up well in conference, and it's just a matter of the consistency day to day from the guys. I'm excited to kind of get to conference play see what happens.
Or are you starting to see those little levels of improvement that you're looking for?
Yes. I think across the board, especially especially our freshmen, they're starting to kind of get, the wheels are starting to grab the road and get going, and it's it's any intercollegiate season, it feels really long sometimes, but it's so short. It goes by so fast. So you're just they're coming along and they're doing the work they need to do, and the outcomes are going to happen.
As a coach, it's a great feeling when you can see the light bulb go on in a player's head, isn't it?
Absolutely, and with tennis, and I'm sure golf, as you were stating, it's like half the work we do is more on the mentality of what's happening and less on the technical things. It's really a 50-50 thing, and I think some people would argue 70 or 80%, mental with tennis, because you just have to be locked in all the time, right? You can't take a game off at this level. You can't. Sometimes it's a point, especially in doubles. It's a sprint. It's not a marathon. So you just have to be ready to go from from the first smack of the ball and take it on.
Seems to me like, despite the issues, despite the adversity, that this group has you excited.
Yes, yeah. I mean the amount of talent on the team is overwhelming. Just top to bottom. And then it's just a matter of Sasha and I pulling it out, in time. And there's no end to how excited I am for where this team's going to be. And it's just a matter of when we get there.
Well, we are looking forward to seeing how all of this plays out and seeing if things round into form once we get to the SoCon season. Again, I'll remind people that we're recording this on Tuesday, so Wednesday at 3 p.m. here at Furman. Get a chance to see the matches in person if you want against Gardner-Webb. If not, you can always follow it online at FurmanPaladins.com. And then you've got the 3-match Texas Road Swing before returning home on March the 18th for a pair of matches with Converse and Richmond. And then, as we said, on Sunday the 19th, UNCG, and you're off and running.
Off and running. Yep. Looking forward to it.
Thank you for coming and hanging out with us, spending some time today.
My pleasure,
It's
Dan.
always good to catch up with you.
Yep.
You have been getting the inside on men's tennis here at Furman with JJ Whitlinger. We will be back. Actually got a bonus episode for you this week because Jason Donnelly was supposed to do his Ask the AD with us last week, had to push it back because of a scheduling issue. So we're going to record another one of these tomorrow with Jason. So you'll have a little 2-for-1 going this week on Inside Furman Athletics. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, as always, I'm Dan Scott saying God bless you and so long, everybody.